Welcome to The Explainer. It's a paradox that makes almost zero sense on paper. Today, we're unpacking the dual nature of wealth. We're going to explore both the hard, calculating mechanics of actually making money and the completely hidden psychological toll of trying to keep it. So, I want you to think about this kind of strange reality. Why do the people with the highest bank balances, the massive houses, and the absolute fanciest titles often suffer from the most paralyzing financial insecurity? It seems totally backward, doesn't it? You'd think more money automatically equals more peace of mind. But as we dive into our sources today, we'll see that is rarely the case. This idea comes straight from the financial planners over at the NABO Capital podcast. They noted that, quote, behind many beautiful homes that you see is a quiet anxiety. They point out a fundamental, honestly kind of ironic truth here. Wealth isn't just about the thrill of growth. Ultimately, it's about survival. And it's that underlying fear of losing it all that literally keeps people up at night. To make sense of all this, we're going to use an iceberg model to map out our explainer today. First up, the illusion of wealth. Second, the mechanics of capital gains. Third, the psychology of investing. Fourth, the quiet financial anxiety. And finally, becoming financially unshakable. All right, part one, the illusion of wealth. Looking rich versus being unshakable. We're practically hardwired to celebrate accumulation, right? Big cars, gated communities, the whole shebang. But as our sources note, just looking prosperous is often a mask used to hide a total lack of an actual, unshakable financial plan. Moving on to part two, mechanics of capital gains. This is the math above the surface. If we really want to understand the anxiety tied to wealth, we first got to understand the dry mechanics of how wealth is created. Here's a textbook definition straight from Wikipedia. A capital gain is an economic concept defined as the profit earned on the sale of an asset that has increased in value over the holding period. It's pretty straightforward math, really. You take the sale price of your asset, a stock, a business, a piece of real estate, and you just subtract your cost base. If that number is positive, boom, you've made a capital gain. And you better believe your government will be right there to take their cut. What's really fascinating here is that this isn't some brand new Wall Street invention. Tracking profits and calculating capital gains has been a part of human nature for millennia. Around 2000 BC, the Babylonians established treasuries for silver and gold just so they could calculate costs, sale prices, and profits. Fast forward to 1789 with the development of property rights in France, all the way to our incredibly complex global tax systems today. We humans have literally always obsessed over this math. But here is exactly where that math gets super burdensome. Wealth is heavily taxed all over the globe. If you look at data from the OECD, the average tax rate for dividend income is nearly 42%, and for interest income, it's 27%. So maintaining wealth means constantly, and I mean constantly, calculating, optimizing, and stressing over these percentages. That is a heavy mathematical burden to carry around. And just look at how these rules change when you cross borders. The formulas shift drastically depending on where you live. In Australia, you might use a discount or indexation method to lower your taxable gain. Over in Germany, there's a flat 25% tax on stocks plus a solidarity surcharge. And in the US, the IRS strictly differentiates between short-term gains and long-term gains held for over a year. The rules are endlessly, mind-numbingly complex, but the core human goal is exactly the same everywhere. Accumulate assets and try really, really hard not to lose them. Which brings us to part three, the psychology of investing. We're hitting the waterline now. This is exactly where the pure rational math of money violently collides with the messy, unpredictable reality of human psychology. Have you ever held on to a losing stock just praying it bounces back so you don't look foolish? Well, that is the disposition effect in action. It's a pattern of total irrationality. It shows us that under the threat of a potential loss, investors will sell their winning assets way too early, but they'll stubbornly hold on to their losing assets for way too long, just out of pure fear. Our fear of losing wealth completely hijacks our logical math skills.
And this psychology, it extends far beyond just a stock market. It infects physical assets too. According to economic researchers Dusansky and Koch, we don't just buy houses to live in them as simple consumption goods anymore. No. We buy them obsessively expecting a massive return. The expectation of capital gains heavily dominates the housing market. That expectation fuels our anxiety about property values and drives huge market bubbles. Ultimately, our very homes just become another number for us to stress over. Let's go deeper. Part 4, the quiet financial anxiety. We are now officially below the surface.
We've moved past the pure economics here to explore the very real emotional toll that managing money takes on us. There is a stark, absolute contrast between these two worlds. On one side, we have the math of wealth, matter-of-factly calculating your adjusted basis, optimizing those long-term tax rates, and tracking stock prices. But on the flip side, we have the mind of wealth, a paralyzing fear of job loss, an absolute dread over spending even a single dollar, and the exhausting 24/7 effort of maintaining outward appearances. The math might be dry, but the mind is often in a state of quiet panic.
Let me share a pretty profound story from the NABO Capital source that captures this panic perfectly. They discussed a CEO of a major insurance company. Now think about that for a second. This is a guy who literally gets paid to manage risk for a living. He had been in his role for 14 years, felt entirely burned out, but was absolutely terrified to resign because he genuinely didn't know if his family would survive financially. It wasn't until a financial planner sat him down and literally mapped out his assets on a piece of paper that they realized he already had more than enough to be financially free. He was entirely blinded by anxiety until someone forced him to actually look at the math.
And hey, it doesn't just happen to high-flying CEOs. Take a look at this quote from a middle-class finance community on Reddit, written by someone who spent years being a dedicated saver. They wrote, "Even a $20 purchase for something I want makes me feel incredibly guilty. It is like my brain is wired to only see the numbers going up. Can you imagine? Any dip in their bank balance causes actual physical stress." By becoming a savings machine, this person basically forgot how to actually live. They built a fortune, but in the process, they trapped themselves in a mental cage.
So we've got to fix this. Part 5, Becoming Financially Unshakable. This is the anchor.
How do we actually fix this? How do we transition from merely being rich on paper to being truly psychologically secure? Well, first, we gotta look at our habits. German creator Champs Psychology Gesgeldes shares a brilliant perspective on this. He argues that financial independence is completely worthless if you don't actually have life satisfaction. His top tip? Cut the nonsense and take active steps toward your actual freedom. Stop the online gambling, stop spinning those virtual wheels, quit smoking, reduce excessive drinking, and start living consciously. True freedom isn't found in endlessly hoarding capital, it's found in actively eliminating the bad habits that drain both your wealth and your peace of mind.
And for those struggling with the crushing guilt of spending, just like our Reddit user, the community offered a highly practical, mathematical solution to cure that anxiety. Step 1, calculate your net income. Step 2, subtract your mandatory expenses and your strict savings goals. Step 3, take whatever is left over and dump it into a discretionary sinking fund. This becomes your official fund budget. Because you've mathematically proven that your savings and your bills are completely handled, you can give yourself psychological permission to spend this specific pool of money entirely guilt-free. It's a brilliant psychological hack. You are literally using the math to heal the mind. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly vital question to ask yourself today. Is your wealth acting as a tool for your freedom or a cage of anxiety? Look, money is just a number on a screen. It's governed by tax codes and historical precedents, but wealth, true, unshakable wealth, requires mastering both the math above the surface and the psychology below it. Use the math to protect yourself, but please, don't forget to actually build a life you can enjoy. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I challenge you to really take a look at your own numbers today.